I've had many conversations with Bridge before I was a United States Senator, certainly before I was the Vice President of the United States, where in so many ways, Bridge predicted what we would be talking about 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. He saw around corners that very few other people were seeing around. That doesn't mean he's always right about every issue or that you'll agree with him on every issue. And I say that to both the Democrats and the Republicans on the committee. But I think that he's the type of perspective that we need so desperately at the Department of Defense. And I think that his role at the Department of Defense will be incredibly important in seeing around the corners of the next 5 years and the next 10 years. And that's one of the most important reasons why I think we should support his nomination. But to my Democratic friends, I think you also find he's a person who can actually work across the aisle. If you look at his long career in defense policy, he has said things that is, frankly, alienated Democrats and Republicans. He's also said things that I think both Democrats and Republicans would agree with. He obviously is a conservative. He obviously is the nominee of President Trump, and we nominated him because we think he's going to do a great job. But I think you'll find that he's the kind of guy that you can engage in meaningful conversation, whatever your agreement or disagreement with his views is. And again, that's one of the things that we need to bring to the Department of Defense. Bridge is a good guy. And I said this in the only other confirmation hearing that I actually introduced to guests of Secretary Lutnick. You need good people in government. You need people who are going to tell you the truth, who are going to look you in the eye, who are going to disagree, sometimes amicably, of course, but actually be willing to look you in the eye and have an important conversation, who you can trust to tell you what they actually think, agree or disagree. And that's the kind of person that Bridge is. He's a great family man. He comes from a life of service, but also a family of service going back many generations. And he's the kind of guy that we need working on policy at the senior levels of the Department of Defense. And of course, that's why the president nominated him. And the final thing that I want to say about Bridge is so much of this question of rebuilding the industrial base. And I think it's one of the few areas of genuine bipartisan agreement. We may not always agree exactly how to do it, but I think everybody pretty much agrees that we have to build the industrial base in the United States that can support the national security policy of the next generation. Whether you have a Democrat or Republican president 20 years from now, you need to ensure that the troops who are under the command of that commander-in-chief actually have the weapon systems necessary to support themselves and to accomplish the mission. That's not a simple matter of throwing money at the problem. That's not a simple matter of saying we need to buy more weapons. It also goes deeply into questions of procurement. How are we buying those weapons? How are we engaging with the technologists of the 21st century? Because we're never going to beat China in a war of population. They have, 1.3, 1.4 billion people, and we've got just north of 300 million. But what we can do is actually have the kind of technology that gives our troops and gives our people the advantage over the long haul. And that means not just buying more weapons, that means being smart about how we buy weapons in a way that enhances our technological edge and ensures that upstarts, not just the big five incumbents, but upstarts can participate in the process of procurement and of giving our troops the weapon systems that they need. So I think that we need to think deeply about these questions. I think that President Trump and the Department of Defense, Secretary Hegseth on down, are thinking deeply about these questions. Bridge Colby is an important part, not just of thinking about these questions, but also accomplishing important policy. And so with all respect to all of you and knowing that all of you will make up your own minds, I highly encourage you to give Bridge Colby your stamp of approval. He's a good guy, he's a smart guy, and he'll do a good job for the United States of America.
It is an exceptional personal honor to appear before you today to be considered for the position of Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Thank you in particular to Vice President Vance for his exceptionally kind introduction and his confidence. I am profoundly honored by his support and presence here today. Finally, I would like especially to express my personal thanks to my family for their love and support, especially to my wife, Susanna, and our sons, Orlando and Thomas, seated behind me. I would also like to thank my parents, Jonathan and Susan, as well as other family members and friends present here today, as well as the family and friends who are not here but have supported me in this process and throughout my life and career. It is my great hope that we can get through the coming years peacefully, with strength, in ways that put us and our alliances on a stronger and more sustainable footing. If confirmed, I would do all in my power to make it so. I know some of you will have different views on important issues, but I can assure you of several things: that I am deeply committed to a foreign and defense policy that realistically protects and advances all Americans' security, freedoms, and prosperity; that I'm willing and ready to engage with those who disagree with me and adapt my views based on persuasive arguments and the facts; that I value our alliances deeply, even as I think they must be adapted; and that I love our great country and will put its interests first and foremost. If confirmed, I pledge to strive with every fiber to meet the grave responsibilities of this important office with judgment, commitment, and determination.